Good day and gratitude, family. This is Face the Nation with Bold and Unchained, and we are back again with another reading before our day begins. Well, I ain't been up but a couple of hours, but good day, family. It's so good to see you all. It is so good to see you all, and I hope everyone is hanging in there. I hope everyone is keeping their heads up and keeping the faith, and most importantly, keep your ancestors at the forefront of everything, our lives. Keep our ancestors in remembrance. And first, I would like to read my disclaimer here. Yes, my copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use of purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. The fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. I just keep that right there until I actually learn it. I would like to start by saying that Bold and Unchained is here to assist Black America and Black media with the uncovering and the confrontations of the many anti-Black agendas. You know, the projects, the organizations, you know, the entire scope of assault on Black America. And it's all across the board. You know, on Bold and Unchained, we are not just talking about one agenda against Black America, like the education system. The education system has always been against Black America. It hurts. The education system has always been against Black America. We, like Malcolm said, our brother Malcolm, we were supposed to teach our own children. Our babies weren't supposed to be in these parochial schools like this, if at all. If at all. Now, the illusion of inclusion may have us thinking that we don't have an open enemy. We have our skin folk who are our enemies. And a lot of them weakest links is everybody's enemy. However, right here on Bold and Unchained, we do address the Black on Black crime, but our first and final focus is what's happened to our ancestors first. We're getting to the hurt. Oh yeah, we're getting to the hurt of Black America. Out there, all the hurt, the violence, the anger, the rage, the disconnect that Black America is feeling right today, that Black America is experiencing right today. We get into that. We get into why. Why do we have a self-hate that's permeating every facet of our lives, whether you know it or not? Yeah, your pillow, your lap of luxury, it might be good, might be soft, and that's good for you. I forgot which one of our ancestors said, was it Fannie Lou Hamer? Said, until my people are free, ain't nobody free. I think it was Fannie Lou Hamer. We got her book right here. Yeah, we got her book right here, but it's not ours. Unless I forget to take it back and they charge me for it, but I'm going to take it back. Because I don't think, my reading ain't that fluent where we're going to be able to go through all of these books in a timely fashion, because it's taking me some time to process all of this violence right here. And I'm really not into the politics and stuff, but who was the lady that she labeled black men as savages? Was it Nancy Reagan or Clinton? The Clinton lady? I don't know. It was one of them, because I remember hearing about super predators and all this and stuff. And, I really didn't. I thought we was all right. For the longest time, honey, I thought Black America was okay. I thought we had reached racial reconciliation a long time ago. But that pastor, that one pastor, he the one was talking about racial reconciliation now. And he the one that was saying, can we use the Bible for racial reconciliation? And in my opinion, the Bible is not sufficient for racial reconciliation. This is sufficient for racial reconciliation. This is sufficient for racial reconciliation. Red Summer, 1919. We got a couple of books. Let's just pull them out. Here go two right here. So we can kind of get an understanding, because we want to know where the disconnect, where the self-hate within Black America. We want to know where it comes from. These right here are the texts that we must look at and process, so that we can begin reconciliation with ourselves first. Don't get it twisted now. We need reconciliation with us first. Now, I know, Black America, I know we don't want to, we can't imagine our life without white folks. We can't imagine our life, with just us and our prosperity. Our prosperities, our abundances, our trust and loyalties to each other. We had it. Once again, we've had it many times. We've been loyal to us. And we need to find it again. This channel ain't against white people. It's just telling the truth about what white America has done. And if you don't want to hear that, then fine. Go find somebody else to listen to. It's many channels. Y'all, it's so many channels out here that ain't just showing how to, do this and do that. They actually telling us, teaching us what's happened to us as a people. I'm glad, that somebody can turn that 5-time cartwheel and stuff that I can't do. That's wonderful. Because I fell on my neck. I fell on my head as a young girl trying to turn a cartwheel, and I heard my neck snap 3 times. It was like, and that was it for me. But I like to see your channel and see you doing it and stuff, but I can't do it. My channel gonna have to go right here with this. Because at Bold and Unchained, we want to address the disconnect. We want to address all the hurt and all the pain. You can pick out many pains that we have. We want to get to the root of those pains and those struggles, that angst. So that's why Bold and Unchained is here. And don't go out and show your anger and your rage and stuff. What you need to do is teach the babies, teach ourselves about our heroes and how to prosper, how to be abundant, how to live, be a law-abiding citizen, but how to do it where we're not forsaking us no more. I'm not evil or angry at nobody. I hope you do refrain all that anger and rage and savagery. But see, that's the key. Because everybody else got all of that, but white folks don't. But we know the truth. So white America, let's not play games here. We're not gonna play games here and stuff, you know. But yes, I am. You know, I am okay. And you know, I can be civil with people. That's how it is when you're not anti-life. When you anti-life, you can't be civil or, you know, just let it be. Let others be when you're not pro-life. So, you know, I don't hate anyone. I don't wish the worst on nobody and stuff. I don't forgive a damn thing that's done happened. And I ain't. And I do think that repentance and repayment is deserved. But yeah, you know, it happened. It ain't happening no more. Somebody else said that history repeats itself if you don't know what history was. So y'all better wake the hell up, black people. We better wake up. Look, check it out. Look at the back side. I attract peace. I attract wealth. I attract success, and I attract prosperity. But we were reading noontime. We were reading the African Americans their impact on United States history. And I think we had gotten to the abolitionists because, you know, remember we read the Louisiana Territory and we read the United States Constitution in this book right here. We even read the Declaration of Independence. And so I think we were going to get to the abolition area. I think we had gotten to some of it because I do have some people labeled here, like John Brown. Remember, yeah, we did start this because remember we talked about John Brown, a white abolitionist from Torrington, Connecticut, and we talked about William Lloyd Garrison, a white abolitionist from Newport, Massachusetts. Because I remember us discussing, this is where we were. Yeah, I remember us discussing John Brown, his attack on Harper's Ferry, him and some other white men. He was a white man, a white abolitionist. He was against slavery. They all were. And they tried to, you know, fight and stop slavery and stuff. And all of them was hanged. Yeah. And that was Harper's Ferry. But now we were at famous black abolitionists. That's where we was at. We even read some of these because I recall some of these names. Yeah, remember William Whipple? And then we saw his name as something else. Yeah, Frederick Douglass. Did we get to Frederick Douglass? I think we'll start with we're gonna start back at the beginning. Famous black abolitionists. Yeah, we're gonna start right back right there, and that way we can just, you know, take it from there. Because these are some very important people anyway. And with repetition, that's key to how we'll remember also. You know. Yeah. Famous black abolitionists. Black abolitionists led the way in the fight to end slavery. Black abolitionists led the way in the fight to end slavery. See, it was black people fighting to end slavery that clicked it something in these white abolitionists like John Brown now, William Lloyd Garrison, Harriet Beecher Stowe. It was because all of them, every white abolitionist that we know of and don't know of, it was because black people was like, no, they fought back against slavery, that they felt the humanity in that denial to accept slavery. I mean, white people didn't on their own. I don't think the white abolitionists on their own decided we against slavery. Because if they did, they would have been the one that was already fighting to end slavery. But it wasn't that way. Just so happens black people led the fight. You know. And we just wish that, you know, everyone else would feel what we feel and would, you know, Vernon John said it best. If you see a good fight, get in it. No, our fight ain't good enough. Don't nobody want to fight for Black America. Because that's sure what it look like to me. Yeah. I mean, don't give me no knife and a pocket full of knives, a bag full of knives. And send me out where they got machine guns and pistols. Now, if that's the case, you might well let me do things my way. I mean, you know, I just feel like white America, you lied. Yep, you lied. All right. Black abolitionists led the way in the fight to end slavery. Many worked through anti-slavery societies and some worked alone. They wrote pamphlets, books, and edited newspapers. Others traveled throughout the country speaking out against slavery. Many worked on the Underground Railroad, helping slaves to escape to freedom. This was a very dangerous thing to do. Many Black abolitionists were often beaten and harassed by slave owners. The slave owners feared that the abolitionists would cause their slaves to rise up against them. Early great Black abolitionist leaders, such as David Walker, Harriet Tubman, and Sojourner Truth, were willing to give their lives that others might have freedom from slavery. Who might have freedom from slavery? Us! Let me read that again. Early great Black abolitionist leaders, such as David Walker, Harriet Tubman, and Sojourner Truth, were willing to give their lives that others might have freedom from slavery. They always thought about us. They always wanted us to not experience any of that. Even if they had to give up their lives, do we even know? Can we even imagine the many of ancestors that died so that we wouldn't have to go through that? And some of them wasn't even heard about or known about. But they died. They gave up their life so that we wouldn't have to experience slavery. And finally, after all them decades, them centuries, it happened. We wasn't in chains. We were able to physically get out of them chains that they had us in. See, the abolition movement produced many other Black leaders. Let's go through them. Henry Highland Garnet, Garnet. Henry was born in 1815 to 1882. Henry was born a slave in the state of Maryland. When he was 9 years old, he and his parents escaped to Pennsylvania. By the age of 22, Henry Highland Garnet had become an outstanding speaker. Garnet later became a minister and served as pastor of the 15th Street Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C. And that was from 1864 to 1866. During this time, Henry was invited to preach to the House of Representatives. At the time of his death, he was serving as official minister of Liberia. And he was born in Maryland. And during his time here, 1815, when he was born, to 1882 till he died, black people were still in slavery in America, right here. Mm-hmm. He was born a free slave. No, he was born a slave in the state of Maryland. They escaped and he became free. That was the only way to get our freedom, to escape. Can you imagine? Can we even imagine just the thought of wanting to escape? Could end up everybody be slaughtered, everybody be killed. Next is Charles Lennox Remond. R-E-M-O-N-D, Remond. Charles Remond was born in 1810 to 1873. Charles was born of free parents in the state of Massachusetts. He was a well-educated man. Charles Remond, while serving as the official speaker of the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society, Charles traveled through New England. In many places where he spoke, people declared him to be the greatest speaker of all times until the great orator Frederick Douglass came along. Yep, and that was Charles Lennox Remond, R-E-M-O-N-D. And he was considered the greatest orator. He was considered the greatest speaker of all times until Frederick Douglass came along. Yeah, Frederick Douglass. And we got a whole little section here on Frederick. Next is Samuel Cornish. Samuel was born in 1790 and he died in 1859. And during their lives, during the lives of each one of our black abolitionists here, they did some remarkable contributions. They gave some remarkable contributions. And it was also Black America wouldn't have to go through slavery. Samuel Cornish. Samuel was born in 1790 to 1859. He was a talented journalist. Samuel was born free in the state of Delaware. He later moved to Philadelphia, where he attended school. In 1822, he organized the first Black Presbyterian church. In 1887, he and another great abolitionist, John Russwurm, Russwurm, they started the first Black newspaper. It was called Freedom's Journal. Freedom's Journal. Other Black abolitionist leaders, such as James McCune Smith, M-C-C-U-N-E, Alexander Crummell, Martin Delany, and David Ruggles wrote articles for his newspaper. Freedom's Journal. That was the first Black newspaper, y'all. Yep. Samuel Cornish. You can remember his name like Cornish hens. The Cornish hens. That's the only way I've ever heard that word, Cornish. But we got to find some type of way to remember our heroes here. If y'all come up with some other examples and stuff, hey, let's go through them. It's got to be a better way to remember. But to me, in my opinion, repetition and experience, but we learn differently. Wow, Freedom's Journal. Robert Purvis. And see, the other leaders that wrote for his paper, they were abolitionists too. I should underline their names, like Martin Delany and David Ruggles, Alexander Crummell, James McCune Smith, he's in here. I don't recall the other names, so I just underlined them. Next is Robert Purvis, P-U-R-V-I-S, Purvis. Robert was born in 1810 to 1898. He was born in South Carolina. His father was a wealthy white man, and his mother was a mulatto. That's mixed black and white. Robert Purvis inherited his father's wealth. Even though he appeared white, he thought of himself as being black. He was educated at Amherst College in Massachusetts, and then he settled in Pennsylvania. He worked to organize the American Anti-Slavery and the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Societies. Wow, he organized two anti-slavery societies. Yeah. American and Pennsylvania. He devoted most of his time, talent, and money to the Underground Railroad. From records that he kept from 1831 to 1861, he estimated that he sent one slave every day. Y'all ready for this? Robert Purvis, born in 1810 to 1898. Robert, from 1831 to 1861, he kept, that's 30 years, right? He kept a journal where he sent slaves with that money. He kept a journal where every day he sent one slave on the Underground Railroad for 30 years. That's what Robert Purvis did, y'all. He sent actually 9,000 slaves that he helped get to the North. And this ain't even mentioning those who might have caught a ride. Because you know, our people were very clever when that instinct that slavery not for what did Toby Kunta Kinte, what did Kunta say? Oh, slavery not for Kunta. But when the black slaves got that feeling, that resonation, oh yeah, it was time to go. And Robert Purvis, man, he freed 9,000 slaves. See, we learn about a few of our heroes and sheroes. But see, this was our fight for our liberation and freedom. It was a movement. It was a lifestyle to try to get to freedom. Now, some of our more kinder spirits, I won't even say fearful, some of our most kindful spiritual people wouldn't attempt to escape to slavery. That don't mean to escape from slavery. That don't mean they wanted to be enslaved. It just meant that the fear was too much and they couldn't see themselves making it. But they knew what to do and what not to do as a slave and just hoped and prayed that the worst, evaded them and their families, which often wasn't the case and stuff, because your babies were still sold from you. You still was flogged, whipped. You still was a slave and treated like a slave and stuff. But a lot of our people, everyone wasn't brave enough and everyone wasn't an abolitionist. It's been very hard. This is where a lot of our hurt comes from. A lot of our self-hate comes from us not knowing. And see, that's a part of our healing. We got to know these things. I remember one year about the slavery movies. Was it when Django came out or when it was really popular and stuff? And people was saying, oh, another slave movie. We tired of slave movies. Who? You don't want to know? You don't want to know about Jane Pittman. You don't sit down and watch Jane Pittman, Deacons for Defense, Martha Collins, West Side Preparatory School. That's a good movie for you and the family, you and the children and stuff. But we got to know these things. It's ignorance. It's ignorant to not want to know our heroes now. I understand a little bit why you don't want to read and know about the lynchings. I kind of get that. But look at life around us. We got to look at this, deal with this. All the violence, the anger, the rage in present day society. And it's selfish of Black America to feel like we don't want to know what happened to Black America. Yeah, it's very selfish. Shit. Oh, and our next Black abolitionist is William Still. Ooh, don't forget Robert Purvis. He freed 9,000 slaves, one slave a day, on the Underground Railroad. Because his daddy was a wealthy white man. His daddy was the master. His mama was the mulatto woman. And you know, he got his wealth and stuff. I don't even know if his daddy was the master. He probably was. We would have to look that up. But 1810 to 1898. But yeah, all of these right here are stories in themselves. Your babies would love these stories. Our children will remember these names and things before we can. Because, see, we got so much to unlearn. William Still, 1821 to 1902. William was the 18th child born to a slave mother and an ex-slave father. His mama was still a slave, but his father wasn't. His father was an ex-slave. In one of those movies I saw, when the man bought his freedom and he went back to his wife and children, the master would tell the man who was free now, you can stay for 30 days. After 30 days, you'll be a slave again, or you got to go. So often, you know, the Black man who was able to purchase his freedom and stuff, you know, he would leave and go and, you know, find a way to make the money and buy his wife and his children free. Yeah, when William Still grew up, he devoted much of his time to helping slaves escape to the Underground Railroad, on the Underground Railroad. He later wrote a book called The Underground Railroad, but ours isn't his. Someone find his book, William Still, The Underground Railroad. It told the story of how he helped 649 slaves escape to freedom. Now, see, he helped 649 slaves escape to freedom. One day, while working on the Underground Railroad, something very interesting happened. As he talked with an escaped slave, he discovered that the escaped slave was his own younger brother who had been sold into slavery when he was young. While he was helping slaves escape to freedom, he found his own youngest brother. Now, his family, his mom and daddy had 18 kids. It was 18 of them. Next, William Whipple. And William was born from 1805 to 1887. William was the child of a Black house servant and her white master, as was the case a lot of times. They like to say that Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hansen was a romantic love affair. No, it wasn't. Sally was a slave. They had a couple of kids and stuff, you know. And they like to say that it was a love affair. I don't think it was a love affair. If she had her choice, I don't think she would have been with that man. Cloves. Cloves are really good for you. Yeah, just put it in your water and drink it. And it's flavorful. William Whipple. Again, he was born in 1805 to 1885. William was a child of a Black house servant and her white master. He was reared in his father's household. He developed the theory of nonviolence. William published several pamphlets and articles on the evils of slavery. Because, see, William was reared in his father's household, in the master's house. So William saw a lot of the evils. And he decided that he didn't want to be like that. That baby sat there in that house, ain't no telling what he heard and witnessed. But he developed the theory of nonviolence. He would not be nonviolent. So he published several pamphlets and articles on the evils of slavery. When his father died, the master, he inherited a successful lumber business. And William used a portion of his wealth to help escaping slaves on the Underground Railroad. We need some way that we can remember. Oh, how about that? William Steele. We're going to remember William Steele. He helped 649 slaves escape to freedom, right? We're going to remember William Steele because he was Steele. That's his last name, Steele. But he moved 649 slaves to freedom. Now, we know he didn't pick them up and carry them, but he moved. He helped them. He assisted them to get to freedom. And that can help us remember William Steele. His last name is Steele, S-T-I-L-L, William Steele. James W.C. Pennington. James was born in 1809 to 1870. James was born a slave in Washington County, Maryland. When he grew up, he trained to be a blacksmith and a brick mason. He could shoe horses and build houses and other structures. See, Black America, we have a lot of talents and skills. We work best with our hands and our brains. Our children need to know how to do these things. Not only will they help them to stop being idle and they'll have something to do, but it'll also create a mechanism where they are prosperous. You know, they're able to think critically and figure things out. It's a curiosity that grows in them, and it helps them to mature and grow and accomplish. Because looking at the way that we've succumbed to the many agendas against Black America, we don't know how to do nothing. We don't know how to do nothing, but we better learn. Yep. Not to mention the New World Order is coming out. You know, I mean, it's out there now. It's rolling. Somebody better put a wrench in that plan. But, build houses and other structures. There is a brother on YouTube, King Randall. And he King Randall. And King Randall teaches Black boys how to do things. I seen him teaching how to change the oil of a car. He was showing them how to do something to the outlet. I'm not sure what it was, showing them how to paint and just different things like that. Go check him out. Our daughters need to know these things also, you know. Okay, when James was older, he ran away from a cruel master to New York. There, he acquired his education and became a minister and an outstanding speaker. He was such a great speaker that he was invited to speak before dignitaries in Paris, Brussels, and London. In 1849, he wrote a book called The Fugitive Blacksmith. It told of his life. It told of his life as a slave and how he escaped to freedom in the North. Yep. He was a slave. They trained him to, while he was a slave, he was growing up, they trained him to be a blacksmith and a brick mason. So he knew how to shoe horses and build houses and other structures and stuff. And when he got older, he ran away. He ran away from his cruel master. I can only imagine what that man did to him. And when he got to New York, he got his education and became a minister and an outstanding speaker. Because see, the churches that we are reading about that was built up were from slaves. They were sincere. Now a lot of our churches ain't about shit but bullshit. But back then and stuff, our pastors were slaves. They escaped freedom. They escaped slavery, made it to freedom, and a lot of them became ministers. And so that's why they had a sincereness to them, a sincereness in them. A lot of them that became ministers and stuff and that escaped to freedom, they had to leave their loved ones in slavery. Because remember, everybody wouldn't go. Everybody wasn't brave enough to go. Everybody wasn't well enough to go, wasn't able enough to go. And it said that Harriet Tubman, she freed 300? I think it was more than that. But I think it's documented she freed 300 and said that she could have freed more when she was going back and forth to free the slaves. But, they didn't know. They wouldn't. Black people wouldn't and stuff. But she never lost a slave. Because she told them, if you think you going back, I'll shoot you dead. And so nobody ever turned back around. They were, okay, all right, Harriet, we going with you, sister. They called her Moses. Yep, they call her Black Moses, Harriet Tubman. But she never lost a slave, a loved one that she was helping to get to freedom. She wouldn't let you go back, though. But then we learned about Robert Purvis. He freed 9,000 slaves. He helped them get to freedom. He put one slave a year. No, one slave a day for 30 days. Yep. One slave a day for 30 days. And he put them on the Underground Railroad. And after 30 years, there were 9,000 slaves he freed. He helped them. I'm going to write that down here. 9,000 slaves to freedom. And that was Robert Purvis. Now, it was William Steele who moved 649 slaves to freedom. That's just so we can remember his name, William Steele. When we hear that moved 649 slaves, we know it's talking about William. But them 9,000 slaves, that was Robert Purvis. Yep. See, we must know. We got to try to learn and know. James Forten, Forten. James was born in 1766 and he died in 1842. James was born free in Philadelphia. He wasn't born a slave. And this was in 1766 when he was born, but he was in Philadelphia. See, that's a story in itself. Some areas were depending on where the states was at and stuff, and I guess the laws of that time and stuff in that state, some of our abolitionists were born free. Some of them weren't. More of them was born in slavery and escaped to freedom. When he was 14 years old, he joined the Navy and served in the Revolutionary War. Even then, 14 years old, and he joined the Navy. While serving in the Navy, he developed a device to handle ship sails. He became a businessman who owned a sail loft. He employed both blacks and whites. With his business, he became the wealthiest black man in Philadelphia. Yep. And that was James Forten, Forten. Yep. While serving in the Navy, he developed a device to handle ship sails. And I don't get on boats and stuff like that, but I think it was a handle, and you could turn it, and it'll flap the sails this way, or it'll flap the sails that way. Yeah. Theodore S. Wright, Wright, like the author, Richard Wright. Theodore was born in 1797 and he died in 1847. Theodore was born to free parents in Providence, Rhode Island. He became an outstanding minister of the Presbyterian Church. He served in anti-slavery organizations and was a conductor on the Underground Railroad in New York. And that's not the first time we've read about the Presbyterian Church. James McCune Smith. And that's James McCune, M-C-C-U-N-E. And you know, James was one of the writers for Samuel Cornish. Cornish Hens, that's how we remember his name. For Samuel Cornish's black newspaper. He was the one that created the first black newspaper. That's Samuel Cornish. He was the first one that created the black newspaper. And James McCune Smith was one of the writers. James was a highly trained physician. He was born to free parents in New York. He received his education and medical degrees from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. He returned to New York and became a successful medical doctor. He brought 2 drugstores in New York City. Wow. Dr. Smith was an outstanding writer and speaker. Let me see if I can find this in this book, perhaps. University of Glasgow. Yep, in Scotland. Let's see. I'm just going to check a few places in this book right here. University City. This right here is a book that I had got out of one of those houses. And it's just 1,000 places to see, to visit before you die. And I'm finding some things in here, some places in here to add to my bucket list. But I don't see it in here. Let me see. I have to look thoroughly, more thoroughly than that. Scotland. Yeah, but I would, if I remember, I'll look in here and see if I see the University of Glasgow in Scotland. And then it says, many other great black leaders gave their time, talent, and wealth, not to mention their lives, to the abolition movement. Wow. Okay, Frederick Douglass. Yeah, this is where we was at. Frederick Douglass. In 1841, a tall, dark, handsome man was asked to speak to a group of people who had gathered to discuss ways of abolishing slavery. The man was Frederick Douglass, and the people were members of the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. Frederick Douglass spoke so well that he gained everyone's attention. He was later chosen by the society to travel throughout the country to speak out against slavery. Frederick Douglass was the best person for the job because he was a good speaker and he had been a slave. Yep. He was born a slave in Talbot County, Maryland in 1817. He was the son of a white father and a black slave mother. As a child, he was eager to learn to read and write, but teaching a slave to read and write was against the law. So Frederick learned secretly from his white playmates and taught himself to read and write. When he grew up, he longed to be free. He noticed that slaves who fought back when they were beaten were not beaten as much as those who did not fight back. So if you didn't fight back, they beat your ass to death. But if you did fight back, they just beat you enough and left you alone. So he started fighting back. So when Frederick was beaten, he began to fight back. When he was 16 years old, he gave his master so much trouble that he was sent to a slave breaker. Yeah, a slave breaker would whip and beat a slave until he agreed not to give his master any more trouble. Still, Frederick fought back. The slave breaker could not break Frederick. He was a young boy. He was 16 strong. And when he decided he was fighting back, oh, his strength was unimaginable. They couldn't do nothing with it. We got a little book that I've read to the grandbabies and stuff. And it's a little small book. It's not really graphic, a lot of stuff. But it told how Frederick fought that master. They were fighting against each other for hours, going back and forth. But Frederick wouldn't give up. And the master was that slave breaker, he was so tired and wore out from trying to fight with Frederick that he just gave up. And they never spoke about it because he knew that if other slaves found out Frederick fought back and got the best of him, that he could never be a slave breaker again. He would never be able to break nobody again. But Frederick wasn't going. Yep. Blah, blah, blah. I know, right? When he was 19 years old, Frederick became dissatisfied with his life as a slave. Even though they couldn't break him, and they knew they couldn't break him, he was just like, this ain't even for me. I'm not finna sit here and just be told I can't do something. I gotta do something. Even though he knew he was gonna fight back, and they knew it too. So he escaped to slavery. Yep, and he was 19 years old. He began making plans to escape to the north. So that was when he was 19. He became dissatisfied, started putting the plan together. It takes time to put the plan together to escape from slavery. Can you even imagine? I mean, today we got a plan to walk from here to there. You know, if we taking a trip and we're going to walk there or however. But in these days, to attempt to escape slavery, that's a different type of planning. So they had to be creative too. So this is what happened. He began making his plans to escape to the north. And at the age of 21, he borrowed the identification papers of a free black man and escaped by train and ferry from Baltimore to New York. Yep, at the age of 21, he borrowed the identification papers of a free black man. And he used that to get on the train and the ferry to New York. Now, his original name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. But he changed his name to Frederick Douglass when he escaped. He finally settled in Bedford, Massachusetts, and began working in a shipyard. Now, it was there that he addressed the members of the Anti-Slavery Society, because he was working in the shipyard in Bedford, Massachusetts. And somehow he came along. They crossed each other's paths. It was destined, obviously. He spoke so well that many people did not believe that he was once a slave. To prove that he had been a slave, Frederick published a book called Narratives. This book told of his life of 21 years as a slave. Since he had revealed himself in his book, he knew that his master could easily track him down. So Frederick moved to England. Yep. He moved to England, honey, and he continued to speak out against slavery from over there. Yep. So the people in England, they love Frederick. Some people there was so impressed. They was impressed by him. They loved him. They wanted him to be free. But they knew that, he wanted to be home back in America. But he was scared to come home because he knew he wasn't scared. He was hesitant to come home because he knew they were going to try to put him back into slavery. I imagine it is a fear for even the bravest man to know that, yeah, they can put your ass back in slavery. They can do it, and they will. Yeah, so what they did, the people in England, they were so impressed by his speeches that they raised enough money to buy his freedom. Yes. So now Frederick could return to America. So in 1847, he returned to Rochester, New York, and began publishing his newspaper, the North Star. He didn't go to England and just, be free. He went to England and he kept fighting out against slavery because he knew he still had family, friends. His people were still enslaved. And he was still working towards that. That's why he had the North Star in his vision. Yeah. So when he got back here and stuff, he began publishing it, the North Star. And Marcus Garvey, didn't he have the North Star too? Well, I know he had the UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association, but wasn't his newspaper? No, he had a ship. We'll read about Marcus Garvey too. His was a ship, a fleet of ships. We must know these things. Frederick soon became a well-known speaker and writer. He also became known as the most outstanding Black man of his day and time. Frederick Douglass became a leader in other areas as well. He was once beaten and thrown from a train because he sat in the first class sections where Blacks were not allowed to sit. Still, he continued to fight for freedom and equality for his people. His actions finally paid off when the New England railroads no longer required Blacks to sit in special places. His actions also helped to eliminate segregation in schools in Rochester, New York. During the Civil War, Frederick Douglass served as an advisor to President Abraham Lincoln. He called on President Lincoln to abolish slavery and enroll Black troops as soldiers in the Union Army. Early in 1863, when Congress approved Black enlistment in the Union Army, Frederick Douglass organized 2 regiments of Black soldiers. His own sons fought in the Union Army. After the war ended in 1865, Frederick Douglass became a leader in business and politics. In 1874, he became president of the Freedmen's Saving and Trust Company, and white people stole every dime. In 1877, he became a United States Marshal. In 1880, he was appointed Recorder of Deeds for Washington, D.C. 9 years later, this Frederick Douglass. 9 years later, he became American Consul General to Haiti. Frederick was not only interested in rights of Black Americans, but he also thought that women should have equal rights too. On February 20th, 1895, he attended a women's rights meeting. As he told his wife about the events of the meeting, he was suddenly stricken with a massive heart attack and died. Frederick Douglass had lived for 78 years. When he was laid to rest in Rochester, New York, he was mourned by thousands of people. Frederick Douglass, the greatest Black speaker, writer, historian, and abolitionist, had given most of his adult life fighting for freedom and equality for African Americans and women. If you visit Washington, D.C., you can visit Cedar Hill, Frederick Douglass's home. It was here that Frederick Douglass conducted much of his work. This beautiful Victorian house overlooks the nation's capital. In the visitor center, you can see exhibits and auto visuals on Douglass's life and work. You can also see gifts and other items that he received from such famous persons as Harriet Beecher Stowe and Abraham Lincoln and William Lloyd Garrison, and many others. And you remember William Lloyd Garrison, he was a white abolitionist. He was one of the white abolitionists like John Brown and Elijah Lovejoy. The Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center. Ooh, and you know, Dr. Umar Johnson has he's still been intending to build, but other people got their schools built already too. But he's intending to build the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey University or school. Yeah, FDMG. And that's Dr. Umar Johnson. On 46th Street in Manhattan, New York, stands the Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center. This center is the only place. Prosperity. This center is the only such place in the country where Blacks and other minorities can develop their writing skills. At the center, students can take classes and workshops in writing poetry, creative writing, playwriting, television writing, journalism, newspaper writing, and acting. The center sponsors a Black Roots Festival each year to give young writers a chance to meet famous Black American writers and performers. So every year they have this Black Roots Festival where young writers, they got a chance to meet some famous Black American writers. Some of the writers and actors that have attended the festival are James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Quincy Troupe, Amiri, Amiri, Amiri Baraka, and August Wilson. Well, I only know of the three. James, Maya, and Toni. So I don't know Quincy Troupe, Amiri Baraka, and August Wilson. They are lessons in themselves. Yeah. So much knowledge that leads to further knowledge. The center, the Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center, is directed by Fred Hudson, who is a famous Black writer himself. He writes plays and scripts for movies and television shows. We should start looking for our own writers of plays and scripts. I mean, we know about Tyler Perry, and we love Tyler. People love Tyler. However, I don't think Fred Hudson as a writer would be really lax with us. I think his movies and things would be more stimulating for us as a people. When the center opened, that's just my opinion, though, you know. When the center opened in 1971, it had only 8 students. That's the year my sister was born. 1971, it had only 8 students. Today, the center has over 200 students a year. Students come from New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and other states to attend classes at the center. Many of these students earn awards and recognition for their work on major television networks, in Hollywood studios, and Broadway. The Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center has won many trophies and recognitions for helping Black Americans and other minority writers and actors, not just Black Americans, you know. They kept it inclusive, sincerely. Banks and large corporations donate money to operate the center. In 1990, the center celebrated its 19th anniversary for helping Blacks and other minorities become better writers and performers. The Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center continues to live up to its namesake, Frederick Douglass, the famous Black speaker, writer, abolitionist, and statesman. I'm going to underline, I wonder, is it still in operation? Ooh, what's this right here? Secrets, Part 1. The Underground Railroad had its own special language, signals, secret words, and secret messages that only the escaping slaves and those who helped them could understand. Yep, it's true. The escaping slaves were called passengers. Those who sheltered the passengers and gave them food and clothing were called station masters or station agents. Those who led the slaves from one secret hiding place to another were called conductors. The secret places, such as barns and haylofts, abandoned houses, and attics, where the slaves stopped for food and clothing, they were called stations or depots. Food and clothing were called fuel. There were also hand signals. A closed fist meant safety. An open hand meant danger. There were also secret words, a sort of special language. Forward meant to send slaves on to the next station. Travel conditions meant safety of travel. Throw a switch meant change directions. Yep. Change. If you get that message, change a switch, that means change directions. Somebody done let it out the bag, you know. The year is 1850. You are living in the North where slavery is illegal. You have decided to become a station master on the Underground Railroad. As a station master, you will hide, feed, and clothe runaway slaves and send them on to the next station. Before you can become a station master, you must memorize all of the secret words, all of the signals, and the secret messages. If you send the wrong signal or give the wrong message, you could cause escaping slaves to be caught and returned to their masters to be dealt with harshly or to be killed. Not only that, you done led them away. You done shown them a way of the Underground Railroad. Memorize each word, its meaning and signal. Study the words with a friend. When you are sure that you have learned the secrets necessary to become a station master, you are ready to complete part 2. Oh, these right here are, after we've read all of this right here about the abolitionists, the white abolitionists and the black abolitionists and stuff, and the Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence, it actually has a part where you could do the work. See? So secrets, that's part 1. Ooh, and that's very informational too. A closed fist meant safety. An open hand meant danger. Travel conditions meant safety of travel. Throw a switch meant change directions. Okay, secrets. This part 2. We're not going to do the workbooks right here. This right here, not for us to do. It is late night, 11:33 to be exact. 1133. Angel numbers. 11:33 to be exact. You hear a distant rap. Oh, we're going to do this part 2 right here. Let's just do it orally. You hear a distant rap of 3 successive knocks at the door. You peep through the shutter. By the lamplight, you can see a shadow with a raised, closed fist. Without a word, you open the door. It is a messenger. He hands you a note and slips off into the darkness. Now, when they look at the thing and see this right here, that closed fist meant safety. If someone would have shown you an open hand, it would have meant danger. Put everything away. Make everything inconspicuous, Make sure the slaves are quiet and, they dry. The babies they had some elixir that they would give the babies to keep the babies quiet while the mother and the father was escaping to slavery. Okay, so this note reads, "Dear friend, tomorrow night, if travel conditions are good, you can expect 3 passengers. Please give them fuel and forward. If you have to throw a switch, you will be notified. You have a good station for passengers." Now, that's the secret message right there. So, in other words, it's saying tomorrow night, if travel conditions are good. As you're saying, tomorrow night, if it's safe to travel, you can expect 3 passengers, which is 3 slaves going to freedom. Please give them fuel and forward. Please give them food and clothing and send them on. If you have to throw a switch, change directions, you will be notified. You have a good station for passengers. And the food and clothing were called fuel. Yeah, our ancestors had to do these things right here. And I didn't know until recently that the braiding, Black people braiding our hair, the slaves was actually braiding the escape route with our hairstyles. Yeah. See, being creative is just something that's in us. We were born, we came here on creation, Black America. Oh, and this right here is a secret code book. This right here is good for the children to do and stuff, but we just reading it. We not going to work writing it and stuff. It's for them. We just reading it. Okay, what is this here? 1,000 miles to freedom. I got to go after this right here. Ooh, 1,000 miles to freedom. Running 1,000 miles to freedom is the title of an autobiography written by William and Ellen Craft. It tells of their daring escape from a Macon, Georgia plantation to freedom in the North. One day, William Craft decided that he and his wife Ellen were tired of their disgusting lives as slaves. They began a carefully planned scheme to escape to freedom. William, a cabinet maker, saved all his earnings until he had enough money to buy his wife Ellen a man suit. Ellen dressed like a man. Their plans would go like this. Ellen, his wife, was a very light-skinned woman. She would dress up as a white man, and her darker husband, William, would pretend to be her slave. She would be going north for medical treatment. She would pretend to be hard of hearing so that no one would ask too many questions. She would wear bandages on her arms so that she would not be asked to sign hotel registers. Ellen could not read or write. In January 1849, the Crafts put their plan into action. They boarded a train and headed west. They boarded a train and headed north to Philadelphia. Sorry about that. Yeah, slavery was to the north. In January 1849, the Crafts put their plan into action. They boarded a train and headed north to Philadelphia. They traveled first class all the way and stayed at the best hotels without any questions. Because, see, they thought Ellen was a white woman. Both William and Ellen played their parts well. William, the slave, looked after his master's every need. As the train roared through the countryside, William's and Ellen's hearts would pound every time someone would look their way. The punishment for runaway slaves was harsh. If at any time they were recognized, they could be captured and returned to their master. Many runaways were sold down the river into Mississippi or Louisiana, where slave masters dealt more harshly with their slaves. They would send them further down south. It was a long trip. It was a long trip from Macon, Georgia to Philadelphia, and the added pressure of being found out made the trip even longer. Finally, they reached Philadelphia, where a conductor on the Underground Railroad took them to his home. Remember? Later, they were taken to Boston, Massachusetts. When the Anti-Slavery Society learned that the Crafts were being sought after as fugitive slaves, they moved them even further to London, England. Yep, it had been a long, scary trip, but William and Ellen made it. In London, William worked for a London business. After the Civil War, the Crafts returned to their home state of Georgia. They bought a plantation of their own and started a school for Black children near Savannah, Georgia. Look at her. That's Ellen dressed as the... No, that can't be Ellen dressed as a white man because it shows she's reading here. Possibly, though. White man did read. But remember, they said her arm was in a sling so that she didn't have to sign anything. But yes, they did that together. Now, that's a power couple. William and Ellen Craft. That's a book we're going to have to get by them. Running 1,000 Miles to Freedom. Ooh, look at that. Oh, check out Henry Brown, An Indigenous Plan. Henry Brown was a slave in Richmond, Virginia. He devised an ingenious plan for escaping slavery. He had a carpenter friend make a box that was 2 feet wide, 3 feet long, and 2 feet 8 inches deep. I think he mailed himself. I think he's our ancestor that mailed himself somewhere else. So he was hunched in that box the whole ride and stuff. I think it had a little hole maybe here and there, possibly so that he could get some air, a little oxygen in and stuff. The box would be shipped to a freight station in Philadelphia via the Adam Express Company. While there was nothing dangerous about shipping a box, there was grave danger in shipping this one. This was no ordinary box. It contained very precious cargo. You see, Henry Brown had asked his friend to build this box for him. He would be shipped to Philadelphia. On the day of the shipping, Henry Brown waved goodbye to his friends and family, climbed in his box, and asked his friends to nail it shut. With him, he took a container of water and some biscuits. His friends posted a sign on the box that read, "This side up." And off to the freight station, they carried their unsuspecting box. The trip from Richmond to Philadelphia took 36 hours. He was hunched from Richmond to Philadelphia. He was hunched in that little bitty box. Once in Philadelphia, the box was delivered to the anti-slavery office. The office had been notified of Brown's plans, and the officers there waited anxiously for his arrival. As soon as the box arrived, the lid was removed. Henry Brown was alive and well. It is reported that when the box was opened, Henry Brown arose, held out his hand for a handshake, and said, "How do you do, gentlemen?" From that time forward, Henry Brown was known as Henry Box Brown. And this is an activity right here of it. If you was in the box, what else would you have taken with you? Oh, Harriet Tubman. Harriet to the rescue. One famous abolitionist was Harriet Tubman, the brave conductor on the Underground Railroad. One day, Harriet was in Troy, New York, visiting a cousin. While there, she participated in a daring attempt to rescue a fugitive slave. Here's her story. On April 27, 1859, a runaway slave named Charles Knowles, Nalles, was being returned to his owner. Knowles had been a slave on the plantation in Culpeper County, Virginia, but he had escaped to Pennsylvania. He later moved to Troy, New York, and joined his family that had been freed under the terms of their master's will. Sometimes when the masters died, they willed their slaves free. Knowles had settled in New York and had become a coachman. See, ain't that cool? Look. And had become a coach. Yeah. Niles had settled in New York. Niles, Nalles, had settled in New York and had become a coachman for an outstanding family there. Niles could neither read or write, so he sought the help of a citizen to help him write letters. When the citizen found that Niles was an escaped slave, he contacted Niles' owner back in Virginia. Niles' owner sent a deputy to arrest Niles and bring him back to Virginia. On the morning of April 27, 1859, Niles went to the town's bakery to pick up bread for the family for whom he worked. It was then that he was arrested by a deputy United States Marshal under the Fugitive Slave Law, which stated that by law, a runaway slave could be caught and returned to his owner. 4 hours later, Niles had appeared before the United States Commissioner for a hearing and had been found guilty as a runaway slave and ordered returned to his owner in Virginia. In the meantime, the family for whom Niles worked for became wary when he did not return from the bakery on time. When they went to look for Niles, they learned that he was being held in custody in the United States Commissioner's office. Several people had gathered around the office building, protesting that Niles should not be sent back to slavery in Virginia. The crowd grew larger as more people jammed the street. They could see Niles as he faced the window from the second floor of the building. The crowd did not want Niles to be taken back to Virginia. Several people gave donations to help buy Niles freedom, but they was turned down. A lawyer was appointed for Niles. The lawyer made arrangements for Niles to bring his case to court. The police, a deputy sheriff, and a deputy marshal tried to take Niles through the crowd of people to the courthouse 2 blocks away. On the way to the courthouse, the crowd became an angry mob. They snatched Niles away from the law officers. They snatched Niles away from the law officials. It was then that the famous Harriet Tubman came to the rescue. According to a witness, Harriet rushed up to Niles and held on to him. She was beaten repeatedly, but she held on to Niles, talking to him and encouraging him for more than half an hour. Harriet held on to Niles and struggled with the officers until the officers lost their grips and Niles was torn away from them. The crowd helped Niles to a waiting rowboat where he was quickly rowed across the Hudson River at Albany County, New York. When he reached the other side of the river, he was again arrested and taken to the Justice of the Peace office. In the meantime, Harriet and a crowd of 400 people had crossed the river by ferry boat. They jammed the building. A large black man kicked in the door, boom, where Niles was being held. He was struck down by the sheriff's hatchet. His body kept the door from closing. Harriet rescued Niles. A passersby gave his horse and wagon to help Niles escape. Niles was driven to Schenectady, Schenectady, New York, and then to Canada. Money was raised to buy Niles freedom. In 1860, Niles returned to Troy, New York with his family and then later moved to Washington, D.C. The people in his hometown thought of Niles as a hero. They were proud of the part they had played in helping Niles to escape the freedom, and he was proud of them for helping him. And that's Harriet Tubman right there. That's a picture of her. Yeah, but look, check this out. Look at Niles looking out the second story window. And look at all the people out there for his freedom. Yeah. Woo-wee. Oh, yeah, let's get out of here. Peace and power to the people. And we'll see you tonight, 12 midnight with the ancestors.